Hey folks, welcome back. Chris in Central Pennsylvania. I have to admit to some degree of exasperation and frustration. I can only imagine what it's like to be a person just arrived in this country, whether it's from the DRC or from Myanmar or from Yemen or Somalia, refugee from South Africa, any of these countries, to arrive in a new place in which the United States has offered you succor, safety, so that you're free from oppression or persecution or conflict that you fled from overseas. Can only think how that is without putting myself in those people's shoes. But I can't put myself in the shoes of someone who doesn't get the treatment or respect that they're supposed to get when they arrive. And I'm not talking about people expecting to have, 7-bedroom mansions and cars catered to them and things like that. What I'm talking about, folks, specifically is the services that we are supposed to provide as a nation to refugees. Again, whether they're Burmese, Congolese, South Africans, Yemenis, doesn't matter. So we have a situation once again, and guess who's involved? Church World Service. I'm not even bothering to call their Indiana office this time because they're just arrogant and don't answer any request from anybody, let alone from the media. I'm not even going to try to find a statewide agency. What I have done is we have a situation with a refugee that's arrived in Lincoln, Nebraska a week ago. A singleton, apparently. Arrived a week ago. Agent took them to a residence. I have the street address. And they haven't heard from the agent in a week. They've repeatedly tried calling the number that's on the sheet, and the agent hasn't responded. So after a week of exasperation with no cash assistance, no food, left to their own devices, they're kind of at wit's end, understandably so. In an effort to find out what's going on, and also now that Church World Service comes up yet again, I'm finding that quite annoying. Yes, I've given them credit where they've done a great job, Dallas, Tampa, but the lack of oversight and leadership from this organization, whose CEO makes $400,000 a year, nearly, is unacceptable. And their behavior is unacceptable. So Lincoln, Nebraska, Church World Service. What do? First, I went to look for Church World Service because calling the case officer isn't going to accomplish anything. They're just going to get pissed off and say, I can't talk to you about people. Fair enough. But I'm simply trying to contact their headquarters and say, hey, listen, you have a problem. You need to look into this. But I've called and rang and rang and rang and rang. No answer. And there's no voicemail. So what recourse? In frustration, I went looking for a place I can report these things at the federal government. I've tried this before to no success. Well, I did find the hotline for the Office of Refugee Resettlement. Seems like the right place to contact. But when you contact the Office of Refugee Resettlement, they want you to answer in Spanish. This is America. I speak 6 languages. Spanish is not one of them. English is our language. So I finally found the button for English. And then I get routed through a series of menus, as you usually do in a call. Eventually get to the point where I push a number and it takes me to an office. And the gentleman is for others because they're one for adults or one for children, then one if you want to report illegal aliens working in a place. I don't know why that's there, but anyway. So eventually I got to the selection like thing number 4, and I talked to a gentleman who was very friendly. He took all the information, and then basically nothing's going to happen to it. And he said, well, we don't take any action because this is not a minor. But I mean, the Office of Refugee Resettlement. You're not the Office of Minor Refugee Resettlement. You're the Office of Refugee Resettlement. So how exactly do we address reporting shortcomings or fraud or failures if your hotline is only taking messages about minor children? It doesn't make any sense. So that's kind of my first beef. So he was helpful, productive, but nothing came of it. So he gave me a number. He said, you need to call Adult Protective Services. And here's their number, 800-652, bump, 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 bump. So I called the number. And it turns out it's not a federal government agency. I asked him that first. He said, no, that's a Nebraska state agency. I called the Nebraska state agency, and I spoke to a lady there after going through multiple menus, and it got to a place. And she seemed very confused by what I was saying and what I was asking for. Wanted to know my relationship. Basically, it appears that Adult Protective Services in Nebraska is an organization that's set up if there's elder abuse or neglect. That's what it sounds like. Or someone with a mental illness or disability, they're unable to feed themselves or unable to take care of themselves, they intervene. So my call looking for someone to contact the refugee agency to get off their ass and do their job got routed to these people. The lady seemed very confused. And she wasn't confrontational, but it was a little snippy. Thankfully, I have a great deal of patience. I was calm and tried to explain to her, what's your relationship? I have no relationship. Well, how do you know about this? Because the person contacted me. Why did they contact you? Because I'm an independent journalist and a consultant, and I help refugees who are resettling in America. And then we moved on from there. Eventually, I gave her the name of the agency, but it gets a little more complicated. Church World Service in Lincoln, Nebraska doesn't even have an office, apparently. According to their own website, they partner with Lutheran Services. Yep, I go to their website, and it says Lutheran Family Services in Nebraska at the address that was given for Church World Service. I called that number, no answer. So I gave her that information, also told her that that's the case. And I gave her the information about the refugee and also their address. Then when we were done, she said, well, you want the report number? So she gave me the report number. I have it here. And then she says, we don't investigate this. Okay. Okay, I appreciate the help, but you don't investigate what? She said, we turn it over to law enforcement. Okay. So I'm curious, is that every case for adult protective services in Nebraska? Anytime there's elder abuse or someone who needs help, do you file a report and then you simply call law enforcement and leave it up to them? She couldn't answer the question, and I don't know the answer about whether the police would get this report and they would take action and go out and see the person. So if you're that refugee and the police show up, it's because I initiated. But now I'm at wit's end. Madeline Rowley, Shelley Hepburn, Chris Wyatt. What do we do now? Well, we can help. And one of my moderators has found a charity in Lincoln, Nebraska that they reached out to that's going to help this refugee. But how do we hold these people accountable? Whom do we turn to? Do I need to contact my congressman? I think maybe I will. Scott Perry, you'll be receiving a phone call from me. Yes, I know you represent my district in Pennsylvania, but you're in Congress, and this is a federal government issue. This is another case, if what the refugee claims is true, of agencies receiving money and providing no services or unacceptable services to people who've relocated here. And it raises the bigger question. How long has this been going on? How long have refugee agencies not been providing services? And is this fraud? What else would you call it? I have multiple agencies telling refugees who are South Africans that we're done with you. You're done. You don't get any more services after 3 weeks. That's nonsense. That's not how it works. Well, we have no money for you. That's also nonsense. These agencies receive hundreds of millions of dollars each. Church World Service in 2024 got $189 million from the taxpayer. That pays for electricity for their CEO's nearly $300,000 or $400,000 salary. Yeah, pays for all that stuff. Pays for their transportation, pays for their leases, for their buildings, pays for everything. The money that comes to refugees is their money from the U.S. government and matching grants from the states. That's their money. That's not the agency's money. And when that money runs out, doesn't mean that the agency is done with you. They have an obligation to provide services. They are there to provide services, like helping you with your CV, converting it, cultural assimilation classes, information on how to get transported. That's their job. So many of them apparently are not doing their job. Now, again, let's put this in context. These are a small number of these refugee cases, but one is too many. 6 in Rochester, New York is too many from the same case officer. It's actually 8 when I include the other nationals, the Afghan and the Nepalese guy, not just the South Africans. 1 is too many. And what's even more disturbing about this is that whom do you call? Whom do you contact? Frankly, I'm at a loss. I've tried multiple federal agencies, multiple departments looking for ombudsman, inspector generals, people responsible. Who is responsible? Who will be held to account? That was the purpose of Madeline Rowley's article in the Free Press and her appearance on CBS News this morning. But there's been no follow-up from anybody in the government that we know of. I'm exasperated. What are we supposed to do here? Again, I don't ask anybody to come to this country as a refugee. But when you've come here, the government's made a promise. And you need to be a man of your word, U.S. government and America. Cheers.